Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Informal. It is podcast edition number 20. We are on the 20th edition of the podcast. I hope you are doing well and I hope you had a great weekend. And my weekend was all right. Hopefully, your weekend was good. Could be better than mine, right? So, anyways, let's talk about the topic for this podcast. We have three topics that I want to talk about. First up is locally sourced textiles, fabrics, and materials. Basically, China is no longer the main source for materials for a lot of these brands, especially in Europe. I read an article in Reuters about that, so we're going to talk about that. Another article from New York Times. New York is trying to revive its garment industry, basically trying to revive the garment workers, garment factory workers, trying to bring a made in New York, locally sourced and locally made garments or textiles. Last one will be Snapchat spectacle and how it affects marketing, fashion, and business. And so, that's what I want to talk about, just something short, but I will get into details about that. You know how I am, I get into too much technical details. And so let's begin the podcast. So I read a article from Reuters.com. Basically, the title is China's Pain, Italy's Gain, High Cost Push Textiles Buyers West. Basically, I'm only going to talk about Europe here because the article pertains to Europe. Now I can talk about the US, but I've also talked about that because we have our own local source around here because US is pretty big. We have tanneries here, we have denim makers, we have fabric makers, we have material makers in the US. So not as big as China because everything's over there, but we have our own factories here in the US. So let me read a quote from the article. It says, when China's wages are not that low, the process of shipping materials so far to China and then shipping products back to Europe become a lot less attractive, said Shu Lu Mo Ching, chairman of Hong Kong General Chamber of Textiles Limited and CEO of textiles manufacturer Hua Feng Group. And then he goes on to say they rather take the production back to Europe. This trend has been obvious. So basically what it's saying is that the wages in China is increasing, meaning the cost of materials and manufacturing is also increasing. Plus you got to add up the shipping, the fees, the duties and the tax and all those import fees. So to total it all up, the European brands are saying, wait a minute, the difference between me buying it local source materials and here in Europe compared to China is not that any different. Yes, it's still cheaper in China, but then again, since the source is made here in Europe, I can visit them. It's much more convenient. The shipping is much more faster. Not only that, it's in the same time zone, so the convenience and the practicality is there. So that's what the article is basically saying. Now the article also says that there has been a reduction of textiles and fabrics, decreasing profits from European brands or European buyers. I think that's also true when it comes to the US buyers. They're also finding out that the cost is not that great compared here if I locally source here in the US. So why am I gonna buy from China? Not only that, it's much more practical to order here in local US. So what does that mean? That means that, well, for one, if you're a European brand, you can easily trace where your materials are from. You can easily visit them. Not only that, you can call them because it's closer compared to China. And there's no language barrier. Now, what does it mean from China? Well, it's not an advantage to China, because China would lose customers, would lose sales, would lose profit, and their GDP as a country would go down. So check this out, right? When you read the article, Italy's textile imports from China fell 8.7% in the first 10 months of last year to 347 million euros. That's 370 million in dollars, according to SMI, Italy's Textile and Fashion Association. Its export to China rose 2.8% to 165 million euros in the same period. That means that the import from China to Italy have decreased, but at the same time, the Italy's export or shipping goods to China has also increased. So that means that Italy has actually made money here. Not only that, they increased their profit and their business by shipping to China. Not only that, China has a higher population than Italy, but that's another subject. So in overall view, what does it really mean? It just means that China is not going to be the main source of materials here. And what do I think of that? I think that's great. Now the problem is, like I said, China will probably do something about it. They will probably control the wages. But you have to understand that China also has a pollution problem. When you make these types of materials, there's some chemicals involved, and they're hazardous, and that's something that they are trying to control right now. And if you look at different websites, obviously the pollution, but China is trying to really control this. And there's no way that China is going to try to control wage, and there's no way they're going to try to keep it low. And it seems like the future is China will not be the main source. I actually think the next continent or the next countries that will be the low laborers and low production costs will be Africa, or the countries in Africa. You have to understand that China business people have already made factories in Africa, and their labor is much cheaper than China. So it seems like the Chinese people, or the Chinese businessmen or women, are already thinking ahead. Now, talking about this topic alone, it's interesting what will happen. Not only that, Europe is not known for its factory workers. They were back then, but not anymore. So we'll see how Europe will handle this. Not only that, if European textile makers and productions will expand, or will it be bigger? If this is the case, then obviously they need to make it bigger. They need to make a bigger factory building. They need to expand bigger, and they need to hire more workers. But here's the thing. Now, the wages in Europe are much more higher. And check this out, right? So if you read the article, the company employs about, this is the Italian, wait a minute, let me see. Okay, this is one of the businesses in Europe. The company employs about 1,100 workers during peak season, but rising wages mean it is now investing in more automation and will cut 2/3 of its workforce in 2 years. Now, are you kidding me? So they're trying to make robots, that way they can keep the wages, they can maintain wages. Now, that's a bad thing in Europe, because I think employment should always be there, but it seems like every manufacturer is trying to cut costs by using automation. But whatever, that's another subject for me to go on, and hopefully this doesn't turn out that way. Now, they won't be the first one to even add automation. Adidas is already doing automation with their Prime Knit shoes. So we'll see how that goes. Oh, not Prime Knit, but 3D made shoes. That's what I meant. And so we're on to the next topic here. And this is interesting. I live in SoCal, where there is a garment industry. There's also a factory workers here. There's also denim makers. We got all types of factories around here. And not only that, we're also close to the port. Is the port of Los Angeles, or specifically the port of Long Beach. And so, in New York Times article, the title is "New York Tries to Revive Garment Industry Outside of Outside the Garment District." So it's interesting that New York is trying to revive its garment industry. So in the article, I read and quote, "City officials have partnered with the Council of Fashion Designers of America, a leading fashion industry group, to help companies across the city modernize their manufacturing processes and workplaces. A joint program, the Fashion Manufacturer Initiative, has awarded $1.8 million in grants to 19 companies since 2014 to pay for technology like 3D printers to create accessories, pattern making, and fabric cutting software that results in less wasted fabric, and equipment that combines the fabric cutting, embroidering, and stitching into one step. A city finance, marketing, and advertising companies made in New York that promotes film and television products and technology companies has been expanded to highlight locally made fashion with advertisements on newsstands, bus shelters, and in Women's Wear Daily and publication that covers the industry." So, as you can tell, they are giving capital and finance and investment funds to local manufacturers, local factories, and also promote them. Promote the Made in New York. Sounds great. Basically, same with Made in USA, right? Sounds great. Same thing with Made in Los Angeles. Wherever you are, USA, Made in USA, Made in America, however you want to call it. Now, back then, as you know, well, if you read the history of New York fashion and its garment industry, it decreased. But now they're trying to revive it, and New York is not cheap. New York is not cheap when it comes to rent, and the article actually states that. And the article also even says that there's some companies that actually move from certain area of Manhattan and move to Brooklyn or wherever. Now, here's the thing. In the article, it says that a CEO of this company, right? Malia Mills is another recent arrival in Sunset Park. Miss Mills, 50, who's age 50, moved her companies to 11,000 square foot loft in Industry City, a complex redeveloped buildings in 2014 after it outgrew its previous home and garment district. Ms. Mills has now enough for space for a fabric library and plans to add more sewing machines and equipment. Now, due to this, people have moved to certain areas, especially Manhattan, to another area because of rising rent, and they just couldn't keep up. Not only that, they're also paying workers, and the rise of labor and the wages is going up. They have no choice. Now, what does it really mean to have Made in New York, and what does it really mean to actually have a garment industry in New York? Overall, when it comes to the city, it's great because they're bringing back the soul. They're bringing back New York fashion. Not only that, they can promote New York Fashion Week, and a lot of designers are in New York, so when they have something locally made, they can have a Made in New York type clothing or a collection. Not only that, it justifies and it actually brings more work to New York. Not just tech, not just music, celebrity, or arts, entertainment is also being produced there. And when you go to a factory in New York, it's not a lot of people. Maybe the most you can have is 15 or 20 sewers. But when you have a bigger building and a bigger finance capital, then you can expand bigger and you could actually produce more units compared to what these companies previously did. And a lot of these small boutiques can also have their line be made in New York for sustainability, and they could also trace where it is. And not only that, a lot of the brands or a lot of these manufacturers have old buildings, so they can actually finance a newer building, a better building, not just some shithole that's probably been there for 100 years. And so that's my take on this New York revival. I'm not entirely sure how it's gonna happen. I'm really not sure because of the rising rent of New York. Everybody wants to be in New York, and I am interested in the Made in New York. I wonder how they will promote that. It's interesting how New York has changed so fast. It's a metropolis. It's basically a lot of things, all all concentrated into one area. It could be Manhattan, or it could be the 5 boroughs of New York. I mean, we'll see. New York is certainly a metropolis, and its population is still rising. And so we're on to the last topic of the 20th edition of this podcast. I'm sure you've seen it in YouTube. I'm sure you've seen it in the news. The Snapchat spectacles. Right now it costs $130. It comes in coral, black, and teal. Basically, it looks like a regular sunglasses with two scopes on the right and the left. So it also comes with a case too. So I've seen in this YouTube, it just basically records, snaps, short clips basically, or it could be pictures. And it's a sunglasses, so if you live in sunny weather, it could be like SoCal, you could wear it while also recording snaps. Now, I want to talk about something different here. What does this particular spectacle mean for business, especially for fashion and marketing, and also technology? Technology, it means that it is possible to have this connected to your device, or you could bring snaps. Not only that, people could see what you're seeing, and you don't have to take out your camera. People could just, you don't have to take out your phone. People could see what you're seeing. Okay, technology, it's great. It's a great first step when it comes to eye tech, or wearable tech. That's what it is. It's actually a wearable tech. So that's great. Now for fashion, again, people can see what you're seeing. It's a great marketing tool. Not only that, this can be a fashion campaign where models can wear sunglasses. Again, it's a perfect way to be fashionable. Or if you see this as a fashionable, I'm sure people see this as fashionable. Do I think it's fashionable? Well, it really depends on who wears it, and depending on how it looks on you. Now, for marketing, they love this. They love this because, man, if you look at snaps, you can go everywhere. Just wear it, boom, 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 snap, snap, snap. People can see where you are, especially if you have a lot of followers, right? It's endless. It's a limitless possibility of marketing here. And I think the only thing that's holding this back is the price, because it's $130. It should be cheaper, but with new technology, it's always going to be expensive. Okay. Let me talk about the features. Okay. I'm sorry. So this specs make memories. This is from the website. Press the button to make 10-second snaps. So it actually records 10-second snaps by snapping it. The light shows. Okay, so there's a light meter here. So if it lights up, meaning you're snapping or you're recording 10-second snap. You can wirelessly add your snaps, meaning via Wi-Fi with your smartphone. And then it can be charged through its case. So it's battery powered. So you can share memories with this. You can do a lot of things on this. So for fashion, it even records 10-second snap without taking your smartphone, so people think you're fashionable. If you're in a runway show, if you have an event, if you're a parent, you can record your kids. If you're marketing, obviously you can do whatever you want. It's a limitless possibility. For wearable tech, it's a great step. If snaps ever decide to do an upgrade or an update on this, again, they can improve the battery life, they can improve the clarity, they can improve the design of this. Here's the thing: if Snap Inc. actually desired better eyewear designers or glass designers, they can actually make this profitable, they can make this fashionable. All they have to do is hire great designers, because right now it's not as good. It's not even a good design. But if they hire the proper designer, they can make this a hit. and hopefully they could actually take my advice here. And so that basically concludes this 20th edition of this podcast. Hopefully I ramble on for 20 minutes and you listen to me for a whole 20 minutes. And so I will see you in the next podcast. This is Mr. Informal signing off. Bye-bye.